hero.
Have you any hobbies?
My hobbies are fast cars and fast women.
Hobbies are healthy. They teach you things. Are you ready? Are you ready?
Welcome in, everybody, to Around the UFL. I'm James Larson here with Pro Football Newsroom, and we've got a jam-packed show. So much going on in the UFL over the last couple of weeks since we last talked. And John Lewis, how you doing today, man? Appreciate you joining the show.
All good. We're here at 2026. So let's get going here. We're less than 100 days away from UFL. Let's go here in Louisville.
And we got two Jameses on the show. Baker's decided to join us after making his PFN debut just a couple weeks back, and talk about fireworks in December, not January. Baker, how's it going?
Going good, man. Spent New Year's up in Miami, or I guess down in Miami, and then came
Up in
back.
Miami. Where
Yeah,
are you from?
In Cuba?
Everything is just
Venezuela?
like up in Texas. I just consider everything up. But came back, had the flu for a couple of days, but we're back. We're here, excited to talk some Renegades football.
Absolutely. We got Slick Rick in the house. Not actually, but he's in Dallas. How you feeling?
Feeling okay. I was almost ready for a whole kind of mentality change after Stoops. I was expecting us to get younger, go with somebody with kind of less experience. And so I kind of prepared myself for an AJ McCarron or Ted Ginn Jr. situation. And then I would honestly say I'm pleasantly surprised. I wasn't, too floored or upset at the news at all. It was just kind of a why, no local ties to Dallas, no recent coaching experience. He has a full-time job right now. So it just didn't really make sense to me, but hey, if he's down to coach, I'll watch his football.
Now, don't count out his Alliance of American Football, 8 games that he coached. He did say today on Sirius XM radio, which was interesting. He said, I had a really good time with the AAF, and that's not a phrase that you've heard pretty much anyone say. But he said I had a good time coaching there, and when they reached out to me, I was like, yeah, I think I'll do it. So I mean,
he did get to coach John Wolford and Scooby Wright. So.
That's right. Right.
To be fair, though, the AAF is still 6 years ago at this point. We're in 2026
no,
now.
You're right. 7
7
years ago.
like 7 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. That's,
I'm way
Baker,
too old for that. Come on.
We're not even 3 minutes into the show. Good grief. It's like when I had Chris Bonio on for the Stallions, so
Oh,
the
man.
special teams coordinator, and he didn't know he was saying it, but he said it like 5 times. And Baker's
He
in
was
my comments
back to
like,
back.
James, I see you trying not to crack. I see you trying not to crack your smile. I'm like, man, you're making it tough. But look, it's been a lot that has happened since. I mean, we did a show like 2.5 weeks ago, maybe, and so much has happened since then. Last time we all got together and talked, Skip Holtz was gone, Bob Stoops was gone, Ted Ginn came in and kind of surprised us all with that hiring, and there were rumors that A.J. McCarron would be hired. Next thing you know, not only is A.J. McCarron the head coach of the Birmingham Stallions, but we also have 8 head coaches across the league. Shannon Harris is back in D.C. Anthony Beck was moved to the Orlando Storm, taking over that new franchise. John, your Louisville Kings, they get Chris Redmond in there, a head coach. We've got we already talked about the Aviators, but yeah, so much moving. Of course, Rick Neuheisel down there to Dallas, just so much moving across the board. And Ricky Prohl ends up in St. Louis. John, I'll go to you first. What are kind of your immediate thoughts as to all these coaching changes and hirings across the league?
Well, I was surprised with the coaches who did not have experience, but you had to think that might be the case when the Ted Ginn Jr. news broke, and then there was the A.J. McCarron. It was like that was inevitable; it was going to happen. We heard so many rumors, and you guys probably heard more behind the scenes than I did about what was going to happen with some of these franchises. And I don't know that if everyone got their first pick, but I would say that I think the biggest gamble of all these, it's not going to be the 3 rookie guys. To me, the biggest gamble, nothing against Ricky Prohl. I think Ricky Prohl has some pro coaching experience, not as a head coach, but he was with Carolina for a very long time as an assistant wideouts coach, and then was the wide receivers coach with the Battlehawks. But I think the biggest risk to me in all this shakeup is Anthony Beck going to Orlando, and it's because it feels like the formula was almost perfect there in St. Louis. It makes sense for Beck. Beck knows how to build a roster, and he's got Florida ties, so I get that. But to me, that was the strength. I thought they would leave St. Louis completely untouched, and that's not what's happened.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because Anthony Beck, when you think about it, over the last few years, he has created a name for himself in St. Louis, whether that's positive or negative. There are a lot of fans that love him. There's some that weren't too fond of the fact that they haven't been able to win the playoffs, but regardless, he has brought a lot of winning football to St. Louis over the last few years. So to me, that's something that should have been taken into, I'm sure it was taken into consideration, but you got to wonder, is Ricky Prohl really going to push the envelope further than what Beck was already doing when it comes to actually increasing fan attendance? I'm not sure, because I don't think that I feel like the two of them have a relatively similar name in that city already as is,
Sure.
considering Beck's what he's brought to the table. And what happens if Ricky Prohl goes out there and the team's 2-8? Fan attendance isn't going to be there no matter what. If the team's losing games, they're used to winning. So we'll see how that plays out. But I do agree with you, John. Of the new hires, I am very happy that Prohl has some of that experience. And not only that, he was on Beck's staff in 2023. He has coached in St. Louis already. He is familiar with these athletes. And as you mentioned as well, he was in Carolina with the Panthers. So compared to some of the other hires, there is experience there. It's going to be strange seeing Beck there in Orlando.
Yeah.
On the flip side, how about that steal for the Storm? I mean, they go, of all the franchises, you've got Chris Redmond in Louisville, who's was an assistant for a year in Texas as a quarterback's coach, if that. And I know he did some work around Louisville, just helping out some coaches, some high schools, but he hasn't coached a lot. And Ted Ginn, on the other hand, was a random assistant for youth football. And then I think a little bit of Saints experience, as an intern for a couple months, if that. So Beck landing at the Storm, all of a sudden, of the 3 teams, expansion teams, as they like to call them,
Right.
Orlando, I think, has the best pick of the bunch right there.
No question.
No.
And I will say, you do have the 3 rookies, and I think, to me, the report card is still going to be incomplete a bit on them, because I'm really interested to see who they're going to hire as their assistants, and I think that's going to be the key for those guys. It's really the key for any staff, but especially for Chris Redmond, A.J. McCarron, and Ted Ginn Jr. Who do you put on that staff that can help guide you and maybe has some head coaching experience and tell you, this is how this needs to be done?
Yeah, and I think that, Anthony Beck wasn't a guy that, had head coach written all over him when he was first brought into St. Louis. Yeah. I think, I never want to say these guys are going to do awful, these guys are going to do bad, because quite frankly, UFL's league of opportunity. We want to see these guys flourish. and can't really judge him too much until we see his staff built out, and then we start seeing results on the field. Quite frankly, AJ McCarron and his ragtag group of podcasters may get people to show up in Birmingham, and they may win some games. You never know. And they may keep him on whenever they move to a new city next year. You may see, Coach Redmond have a good team in Louisville. Ted Ginn with his Ohio State connections, who knows what kind of staff he could build there in Columbus. So that's where, with the Renegades, it's, who's Neuheisel going to get on his staff? He hasn't coached in 6-7 years. He, last time he truly coached in college was, decades ago. Who does he have on a speed dial that's, ready to go, is, recently been a coach. His son just got hired at Northwestern. So it's kind of like the experienced guys may be in a worse off spot than some of these players who have been trying to get opportunities.
I got a question here from Dylan who's asking me if I know he says here I can't name names, and yeah, I cannot name any names right now, but I do know of some of the assistants that have been hired, and I will say St. Louis, I'm pretty confident with the guys that Pro will have around him at OC and DC. Some really good choices, and two guys that we are very familiar with in the spring football space. So I will leave it at that. I'm not going to name names, but I'm feeling pretty confident right now about St. Louis's odds of at least Pro having the right staff around him, which is going to be important. I feel like we talked about this when Ted Ginn got hired, right? It's like, okay, who is he going to bring around him to kind of show him the ropes and help him out, get accustomed to the team? But now all of a sudden, Chris Redmond's in here. AJ McCarron's in here. Dallas and Houston are kind of interesting hires because, as you said, Rick Neuheisel, he's got plenty of experience. Kevin Sumlin's back with the Gamblers. I mean, that's kind of like a
that's yeah, right. And it's I think it's really important that these guys, there had to be assistants already hired or will be hired this week, because we are going to go into a draft, and you're just going to start putting together rosters this weekend. It just feels like you've got to get this stuff started pretty early. And this week we're going to go in turbo mode. Like when you're trying to build these rosters, you're going into this 3-day try to build the roster, and it feels like it's not going to be that long until training camp, and then you're kicking off March 27th. So those staffs have to get put together as quickly as these rosters get put together this week.
Well, that's what's really concerning me is Ted Ginn had a quote that was posted on the Aviators account today, talking about how he's relying on the centralized scouting department, kind of doing a lot of the legwork. Yep. And it's like, okay, how is that going to work when they do all the legwork and then you hire assistant coaches and none of those guys fit your coach's scheme? It's just, I don't know how they're going to get this done in this amount of time.
Well, and that was also my question too, about, they call it a quarterback draft, but from what I'm kind of looking at this thing, it feels like it's more of a kind of confab than it is a draft, because it sounds like they're going to get together and maybe assign these quarterbacks and have, maybe a discussion back and forth. It's almost like, they're picking the NCAA basketball pool rather than they're really like drafting quarterbacks. That's the way I understand it. Is that what you guys see?
Yeah, it's an allocation essentially. Yeah. I equated it to ranked choice voting on Twitter. I think it's kind of disingenuous to call it a draft, as well as I think it's disingenuous to call these teams expansion teams. We're going from 8 rosters to 8 rosters. It shouldn't be this difficult. Right. And I feel like things would be really simple for fans to follow along if A, you explained the rules clearly, and then B, if you dropped like a player pool. If we knew what players to get excited about, I feel like fans like that would be blowing up right now.
I think the NFL is going to suck the oxygen out of the room, this weekend as it usually does. So I kind of get that. So I think the timing was interesting, and I can almost understand like why they're doing this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then once the NFL playoff games are over, Monday we move into a whole new news cycle. And then maybe they drop that. As they said, they're going to drop that on Monday. So that might get a lot of people talking, and hopefully that's the case. But it just feels like there could have been a little bit more fan service, for us sickos who would sit here and actually like watch it, online.
I think an issue too is that because it took so long for a lot of this to get into place, their hands are tied. Like, when are they going to release this stuff, right? I mean, there's only so much you can really do when we've got a month and a half left until training camp begins. You have to name your head coaches. There's no ifs and buts about it. If you're going to redraft the league, you just have to do it. Like, there's no more There is no more like, oh, we've got time, we can flush it out. There's no more of that. Like, this needs to be flushed out now. You need coaching staffs built. You need rosters built, which at least now we have an idea of where each team is going, right? With Louisville inheriting Memphis and Michigan going to Columbus, which is very interesting. And then Orlando gets San Antonio. But also at the same time, it doesn't matter a ton because you're only protecting up 12 guys from those rosters. And the coaches from those teams, they don't even have to protect 12 to my knowledge. I think what it is they can protect up to 12. So they can decide if they only want to protect 5. Like, if Chris Redmond only likes 4 guys from the Showboats roster, he can protect those 4, and the other 8 slots will just remain open for the draft. So that's also something to take into consideration. I'm glad we at least finally have clarity on that because Ted Ginn would be a wise man to protect 12 players from that Michigan Panthers roster, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's a team, we saw – like, they've got some real talent on that team. And that's what I was going to ask, the clarification I was going to ask for. So if, let's say Louisville, as you said, protects only 4 players, do the rest of those players just go into the general pool for the draft later? That's the way I understood it.
That's the way I see it as well, yeah.
Yeah, I think, let's say Ted Ginn decides not to protect Toa, Panthers running back. He would get thrown into that draft pool, and then he would probably be available on the 13th. He'd be available in both drafts, I believe, but you would expect he to get picked up on the 13th because that'll be the draft for the guys who already signed contracts, who are already in the UFL in 2025, etc. And then the next day we'll kind of open up to more of a broad, like, anyone can get picked up kind of deal.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, it was a whole document that I was trying to break down and finally try to understand. So that's the way I understood it.
Now, the one thing I will say, like the document that was officially released versus the one that was leaked, is the biggest fear was kind of the regionalization and not being able to protect players. But what we actually got was kind of the opposite, where we're able to protect up to 12, and then regionalization is only 3. What do you guys think about kind of that flip? Do you think that was after the fact, seeing fans' reaction, or do you think that was them still kind of at the drawing board trying to figure things out?
My personal take is I think they were at the drawing board when that document got leaked. I think I wish we could have done an episode on it because there are a lot of interesting nuances in there where I was like, something about this just doesn't feel right. And even though it's spring football and anything can happen, there were a couple things in there that's just like you'd think they were rethinking this, and they were. And, at the end of the day, we're only having 3 regionalized players, which in my opinion is actually lower than what I thought would happen. I kind of figure we see some more between 5 and 10. So to go from, I don't know what it was, a dozen on the previous document down to 3, very sudden change from too much to too little. Again, it's not too little for me, but according to these standards, we're doing a whole redraft, but only for 3 regionalized players guaranteed? Like, that even makes it more confusing now, actually.
That was surprising to me that I thought, if you're going to give, what was it, 3 or 4, colleges that were in that region, I really thought like that. Yeah, you were going to look at, okay, they've got the rights to maybe 5 to 10 players, from that pool. So that was interesting.
Yeah, and I'm all for having a couple regional guys. Didn't the AAF do something pretty similar to that? I think there's some type of allocations. Because, I was in attendance, of course, for the Renegades game versus the Battlehawks, and a big Manny Wilkins fan, but Manny Wilkins went down, and Max Duggan comes in. And already in the stadium, he was a backup for St. Louis, but there was already 24 Max Duggan jerseys just in the stands right there. And that just goes to show you. And all the buddies I talked to who are TCU fans, anytime I mention, that guy's name, they're like, oh, like he's playing, like when's their game? I'm like, well, he actually plays in St. Louis, doesn't play in Arlington. So bringing guys like that, of that caliber into their hometown teams can be huge. We saw Birmingham have their biggest game and AJ McCarron came back into town. So having like a couple of those marquee guys makes perfect sense. And I have no issues with that. But I feel like we were all kind of felt led astray initially due to the UFLPR's announcement of, we're not going to change rosters and Mike Rapoli, regionalization. And then it turns out to be kind of no big deal. Just one of those things that I feel like, man, if you're kind of more transparent from the beginning or explained your ideas further, there wouldn't be all this hoopla.
Well, and I think too, what we have learned over the years is it's always fluid. Like I think they can. I was surprised they even put that statement out because things change so much, and then when you have such an overhaul of the front office, and then you're going to have an overhaul of the entire league. Yeah, I was surprised to see them send that out. I think it was in November maybe or something. We saw that. So yeah, that was it's
didn't
all
make sense.
parts in motion.
Especially because when you look at the wording of it, it left the door open for change to happen once certain things were in place.
Right.
And then that's what we're seeing. Yeah. And now we're only having, 3 protected / allocated regional players to each roster, yet we're still blowing it up with an entire draft. And while I see the vision and while I understand the vision, and I mean, when you have 6 new head coaches, then it's like, okay, I mean, yes, you do kind of want to do some sort of redraft, but at the same time, the football product was very good. And these rosters had a lot of continuity. Like, what's going to happen now to the Renegades, who had so many guys that played there a few years, and that's why they did see success. And I know Baker, they weren't in the playoffs the last 2 years, but can't deny there was a lot of talent on that roster. Same goes to the DC Defenders. They won that championship. Why? Because they've had Jordan Chiamu on that team for 3 years, and because they've had so many of those guys there throughout this entire run, from losing the championship to missing the playoffs and then going on that run, a lot of that is from that continuity. Now you're building from the ground up, and I know someone in here asked a few minutes ago about what's going to happen to Anthony Beck and his Battlehawks players, and Ricky Proehl's going to get to protect some of those guys. I mean, I'm sure Proehl's going to protect a Hakeem Butler, and Jacob Sillers obviously is back with the Lions, so he's in the NFL and he can't be protected. But Steven Gonzalez, some of these really good offensive linemen they have, Beck's not going to be able to get those guys. He's going to have to try to draft whoever's left in the upcoming draft. So it's going to be interesting. What's going to happen when Travis Feeney doesn't get protected and then Beck drafts him to Orlando? Battlehawks fans are going to be pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Orlando is the one I'm really afraid. Like, I would be afraid of if I was, St. Louis, because all those guys are Beck's guys. So no matter who Ricky Proehl is going to protect, which I think all teams should be protecting at least 12, because all these rosters are crazy talented. But everyone who gets left off, they're immediately at the top of Beck's list. He's worked with them before, knows how they play, knows how they work. It's going to be the new guys that are kind of having to do their homework a little bit. And you may have somebody like DC where, they protect guys, they fall into the draft, but nobody else knows them like Shannon Harris knows them, may be able to pick up some more of your core. And then you have the Renegades and with New Heisel and Ted Ginn and Redmond, who just have zero clue. They've never been around the spring scene at all. And, maybe picking up new guys.
Yeah, and another thing to take into account is McCarron going to target any Battlehawks, because, he played with the good chunk of those guys, and he knows how talented some of them are. Yep. And also, it's going to be some bad blood with him trying to snag some of Beck's guys. I mean, I feel like that's going to be a fun storyline to track. Also, shout out JoJo Tillery at Birmingham Stallions Safety. He's in the comments. What's going on, JoJo? Appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah, it's you're basically looking at, when you break it down, if you can protect, the 12, you've protected the 12 or up to 12 players. It's almost like you're going to have, it is blowing it up. You're going to have like 8 expansion teams, but it's the entire league. So, but hopefully there will be enough. I mean, there are some really, really good, talented players that are going to get protected, and I think there are going to be some really good, talented players that will go into the draft. But man, you talk about the continuity and the team chemistries that are going to get blown up. It might be a little bit of a shaky start for every team.
Yeah, I'm really curious who AJ is going to protect in Birmingham, because we've kind of seen some shift in that locker room. Jamar Smith's made some public comments. I just wonder. I don't know. AJ's always had that whole XFL versus USFL kind of butting heads. Is he really going to, protect 12 guys, or is he going to be one of those like, no, me and my staff got together, we're starting completely fresh in Birmingham, new culture, Skip Holtz gone, McCarron in.
And also on that, some of Birmingham's standout talent has retired. CJ Marable, after 4 seasons, hung it up. Jay Sternberger stepped away, which is a shame. Friend of the show. Shout out, Jace, if you're watching. Please text me back one of these days so we can get you back on. But yeah, I would assume more Stallions have retired that we don't know about. There's a lot. I've been hearing behind the scenes. There are some guys who will be announcing their retirements here soon, and some of the guys that McCarron might want to keep are probably going to be gone anyways. So something else to take into account.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't hear some more retirements next week as well, because they might not like, how this all shakes out. It could happen.
Well, don't be surprised if players just don't show up for camp.
Yeah.
They get drafted and kind of just ghost. We see that happen every year. And, the more you kind of piss players off, not letting them know what's going on in the offseason, the more that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's, I'm still optimistic about the season, but yeah, we have seen some of the players speak out about it. Like, I'm learning this from social media. I'm not hearing this from the league.
Travis Feeney.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not mentioning names, Travis Feeney. But yeah, but again, it almost feels like, like a new league again. It feels like we're doing the reboot, and we're gonna hit some rocky roads with these things.
Yeah, I think 5-6 years, give or take, of spring football consistently, and we're entering our 4th complete redraft across that span. That's kind of crazy, like that.
Yeah.
There's a reason why it's hard to really build, and hopefully this is the last one, right? Hopefully this is where, all right, this is it. This is the blueprint. We're finally gonna get it right. We're not gonna have to do this again. But again, we've seen these patterns time and time again. We'll see. One coach I want to talk about, which I wish Ref would freaking jump on here, but I don't think he will be. Kevin Sumlin's back in Houston. What the hell? What timeline are we on right now?
That was a surprise to me. I was like, if you would have given me 100 guesses on who would be the new Houston head coach, I don't know that Kevin Sumlin would have been in the top 100. At least he's got experience. There is that. It was the 1 year of pro experience. It was like 3-7 with Houston. But he's coached like Rick Neuheisel. He's got the big time coaching experience, so that doesn't hurt at all. But that one was a real surprise when you're talking about 2022, and then here we are 4 years later, and he's back in the UFL.
You can't screw up this timeline any better. You've got the Houston Gamblers in 2022, coached by Kevin Sumlin. He steps away. 2023, right. Here comes C.J. Johnson taking over. 2024, C.J. Johnson's Gamblers get rebranded into the Houston Roughnecks in the merger. 2025, they decide to let go of C.J. Johnson and rebrand the Houston Roughnecks back to the Gamblers. And lo and behold, who comes walking back in to replace C.J. Johnson is Kevin Sumlin. His former, you can't make this up. I
never even thought about that. But you're right. Yeah, it's like I thought about. Yeah, he did coach the Gamblers one time. But
John, imagine us ahead of the 2022 inaugural UFL season, getting told that Houston's gonna have multiple rebrands and the same 2 coaches across that span, replacing each other. In 2 years they're gonna go back to the Roughnecks brand because they're gonna realize that one is the better brand. Yep. And let's bring C.J. Johnson back.
Yeah, hire C.J.
That's spring football in a nutshell, right there.
Yeah. So history repeats itself. I'm hoping it repeats itself, wins and losses as well, because I love Houston being little bro. Ever since 2020 was rough, but since then had Dallas, Arlington up here, and then Houston down here. So
all they had to do was make A.J. Smith head coach. That wouldn't have happened, but.
Do literally anything.
I know there are stories here that probably cannot be told. I would love to know the discussions that happened, or maybe why those discussions didn't happen.
You never know.
Yeah.
I think you might know, but you're not.
Well, I can't publicly say that I know on
That's
air.
That's what I
thought. We covered a surprisingly decent amount over the side. Ducky's supposed to be jumping in here soon. He said he's booting up his thing. He's very late, even though we moved this show to 7 o'clock for him. But shout out Ducky. He'll be here soon. In the meantime, thoughts on this draft process in general? We're going to have – this is going to be a gauntlet next week. Actually, it's starting this week where quarterback assignments need to get in by Friday. Those will be, on cue. Look at that.
He makes it.
Ducky's here, half an hour late.
Whoa.
Sounds about right for someone in Ohio, so.
That's true. We're always on time.
Ducky, how's it going, man? It's been a little while.
Good. Good. Still adjusting my schedule because I was in Mountain Time for like 2 weeks, and I cannot get that readjusted. Hey, John's wearing Memphis gear. Hell yeah.
Look, I mean, if Louisville fan, James has talked me off the cliff here. He's like, you are going to get some good players from Memphis in Louisville. So I'm all in.
Look, I think they had some talent there. I mean,
They
it wasn't
did.
a ton of talent, but there's enough. Like, if you protect 10 guys, you can. I mean, you should protect Matt Colgan and Matt Mangle. At kicker and punter.
Oh,
Those are two
yeah.
of the best specialists in the league. And then
That's weird.
you've got some wide receivers. You've got some DBs. I mean, Cam Dantzler, it's a former NFL draft pick. He played pretty well last year. Lance Boykin's pretty solid. Kyrie Woods has a lot of potential there as well. He's played well. Wide receiver Jonathan Adams. I mean, that's a guy I want on my team.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
the dude's got one of the best catch radiuses we've seen in spring football. And Kyle Oxley's up there too. He really flashed towards the end of the year. So, yeah, I would. Offensive linemen as well. I mean, it was
Yeah.
much better compared to 2024. They've got a couple guys.
Yeah. Very good
My boy
team.
Noah
just-
Henderson.
Yeah. Very good team. Just the coaching changes constantly is probably what.
Yeah.
They were hamstrung from the beginning. There's no question. Yeah, there was talent. I mean, I did watch them and got to see them actually in person, in Memphis, and they're 100%. There's talent there, and I would, hopefully, the core of that talent does end up here in Louisville.
Yeah.
Man,
Eli Walker?
David Davis,
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially Eli Walker. If he's not protected, that'd be a pretty stupid move.
Ducky, we talked a lot about, these coaching changes, some of these hires. Don't need to go over everything, but just your immediate thoughts on the state of the UFL after these 8 hires.
I mean, I can only give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, but I think I'm going to give it a thumbs up so far. There's a couple of questionable coaches, in my opinion, that probably could have had somebody else in there, but outside of that, I think they're doing pretty well. In terms of, I don't know, I think it's sustainable. I don't. It all depends on if people show up or not. I think inevitably.
That's
Yeah.
the
That's
question.
So 7 markets.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think everybody but Birmingham will probably show up. Because Birmingham just tough. Getting
Toyota
that
on
close
right
to-
now.
Yeah, getting that close to Mother's Day every single week.
But listen, and yes, Abdul, I did get free parking at the Memphis game, so that was really awesome. I had a great place to park there. But do the Memphis fans, are they going to get together and say we're going to prove everybody wrong on this? We got bad mouth. We didn't show up, but this time we're going to shut all you people up. We're going to shut Mike Rapoli up. We're going to do this, and we're going to show up for these games. I'll take that as a no.
Is that why their parking lots are so full? Were they giving out free parking?
No, I got a media pass, man. I was official.
Oh, okay. I just kept seeing their fans talk about their parking lots and how so many people showed up, and I was like, well, did they go into the stadium?
It was
Where
funny.
were the cars?
I got there and I thought
Too
like
scared to get
this
out.
is like they had a big turnout, but there was actually another event there. They did have a very good core. They had a core group of fans that were having a good time. It was Memphis and the Houston Roughnecks, and there were Houston Roughnecks fans in attendance. I saw it with my own eyes.
The one game I went to in Memphis this past season was when they played St. Louis. So it actually was a good crowd because 80% of them were Battlehawks fans. So,
Right.
The 2-hour drive.
JoJo's right. Help us out with some new gear, man.
Yeah.
We're living in 2024 here, 2025.
When are we thinking
Baker's
uniforms
got
going to
some new
drop?
gear.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I just made this myself. Little Renegades jacket. Fit
All
check.
right.
Jojo, you got to hook me up with some Stallions gear because the only gear I've gotten is Showboats gear because they hooked me up. Every other team. Let down.
I bought an
I paid for
embroiderer.
this.
Okay, I haven't bought the embroiderer yet, but I'm gonna try and make some like flight test.
Well,
flight
John
vest
needs his
stuff.
$9.99 in shipping back before he can make any other
Hey,
purchases.
he got it back.
Let's go.
He got it. He got it.
Ducky helped me out on that one. And in fact, followed up with an email today asking to see if it has not shown up yet on my credit card, but they actually did follow up. It was
They're
the
attempting.
Ducky
That's
effect.
good. That's
Yeah,
good.
it's the Ducky effect.
That's
He
right.
hasn't gotten it then. Until it hits the bank account, not official.
You're right. You're not wrong.
But progress.
That's right. We've talked about, a rocky start and the whole reset and everything. But yeah, the UFL shop, I don't think I was the only one that was having problems with them.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw 100 AI responses from the UFL Shop X to a bunch of people. So I don't think you're the only one, John. But
Probably
don't
not.
worry, they've been buried in markets and new teams and venues, and they'll figure it out.
They will.
The
They'll get it-
AI
they'll get it
models will
together.
improve.
Dude, what is it?
Hey, because I'll be interviewing them this year.
What's in your tank? What is moving?
Oh, I got a turtle.
Oh,
His name is Crush.
Zach, I
You ever
don't know
seen
if you're
Finding
asking
Nemo?
me or Baker, but yes, I would wear King's gear. You'd have to get it in extra small because I'm a midget. But other than that, if you can figure that out, we'll be good. For legal reasons, that's a joke. But
Yeah, he wears a youth medium, guys.
he's a dwarf.
Ay. All right, so before Ducky jumped on, I was getting into a series of questions, and then he kind of interrupted the flow there. But we have a draft coming up, and once again, we're going to have to watch 8 teams go from between 0 and 10 players up to 60 to 64, give or take in that range. It's going to be a gauntlet across 2 days. So much going on. I mean, the first day, mainly UFL players. The second day, it's open smorgasbord. Thoughts?
Go ahead, John.
My thoughts are, as I stated before, because you were a half hour late, Ducky, but I will repeat. Like, I think there's a lot of talent out there, and it's going to be interesting to see. I just wish, again, that there was some way for us to kind of watch this, that we can kind of follow along. Eventually, I hopefully next year, that you have to make the assumption that there's going to be spring football next year, that this will be something new, and that they'll make it an event because everybody will be in place and everything. But you're right. It's going to be interesting to see not just who gets drafted, but next week, are we going to see people that we see some players that are like, I don't want to play for that team. I don't want to play for that coach. So I'm just going to call it quits. And then, where are you going to get players from after that? Because we're going to go into training camp pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's going to be a big issue because I think a lot of players have been on these rosters for a while now. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. A lot of them are just going to be like, I retire, or they're just going to be like, I'm not doing that. It's either put me somewhere else or I'm not doing it.
So what happens when the draft happens and then 2 days later there's a whole wave of retirements and Birmingham is down to 30 players?
Right. I mean, seriously, but you think about what happened, where are these players going to come from? I mean, I know there are a lot of free agents that would like to be out there and, come in, but maybe they open up that college regionalization to more than 3 players after that.
Yeah, and it also brings in the question, right, where, there's so many great athletes out there, but there is a cap on guys that really can thrive at this level, right?
True.
And what worries me is if they can't fill out these rosters the way they expect, if there's retirements or just players that don't want to play certain places and whatnot, you're going to kind of have to open up your window a bit wider to let in some of these fringe guys that would never get on a team under any other circumstance. Hopefully that means that, some of these openings, maybe there's some guys that they can attract that were thinking about signing a futures deal, but you know what? No, I want to actually get some game film when we go to the UFL. There's a boatload of those guys, so I would expect there to be a lot of, new talent inflow coming into the league over these next couple of weeks, guys that get drafted or guys that sign as free agents after the fact. But yeah, I mean, that's an important question to kind of take into consideration here is how is the UFL going to address that issue if it arises? I mean, there's no guarantees. I mean, hopefully I will say, there's a lot of players that I've talked to that they're unhappy with how things have gone. They're upset they might not get to play for their team, but they still want to play football, right? At the end of the day, they want to play ball. And at the end of the day, it is spring football, right? I know there's some guys that would love to keep playing for Michigan or Birmingham or wherever, but at the end of the day, the fan bases are great, but 10,000 fans, 8,000, it's not the same as it would be playing for Penn State or playing for Alabama or you know what I mean? Like there's a little bit less of that connection where I feel like it's easier for a guy to go from playing for the Memphis Showboats to the Louisville Kings. Like
Sure.
It's going to be similar. It's not like you're going from Penn State to a JUCO college in California. Like.
Well, and with the hub, I mean, you get the same paycheck. You're staying in the same hotels at the same facilities. You just fly to a different stadium once a week, if that.
Yeah.
Just, if you're in Dallas, you have it set.
You only got to do that every other week. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that is one positive. That's a good point. It's not like they're living in these communities yet, and I know that's Mike Rapoli's grand vision, and it would make a lot of sense. But there are going to be some. If everything lives up to what the plan was and what the announced plan was, they will be getting into the communities a lot more, as the season goes along and doing those things. So maybe they will get familiar with those places and hopefully, again, there are the teams that came back. Yes, they're familiar in their markets, and hopefully that starts to build in in Louisville and Orlando and really in all the markets, because some of these players might not be too familiar to those really strong fan bases.
I keep having to mute my mic because there's so much racket with dogs upstairs. You'd think a president was getting kidnapped or something. But on another note, it keeps messing with my train of thought here. But another important thing to talk about is the quarterbacks, and they're going to be allocated they call it a QB draft, but they're more so going to be allocated maybe based on location, but also the coaches can kind of send in their votes, and we'll see it. The league is going to kind of really have a hand in this. And what's going to happen, John, if one of the Orlando or one of these teams gets 3 guys that just aren't really starting material at this level, and then what happens when hypothetically Birmingham, they've been stacked every year with Matt Corral, Alex McGough, Adrian Martinez, guys that could start on literally any team. And then a team like Memphis, where you look at the E.J. Perry, Troy Williams, and some of those guys, and it's man, these guys would be backups on any other team. So it's how is that going to shake out on Friday? I mean, that quarterback is going to make or break most of these teams.
Yep, and like you said, it seems like it's not really a draft. It feels to me like they're all going to sit around a table and debate and try to figure out who goes where, because it said they're going to work with this front office and this group. So you're right. The league has to set these teams up for success, and you have to hope that I think there's enough quarterback talent to be spread around, but the guys who get protected, is there enough to put on the rosters of these other teams once those guys that are protected are in there? So you're right. That's the question. You can't have weak quarterback play in this league. You can't have weak quarterback play on any level.
The quarterback play will make or break. And we've seen, the quarterback play has been trending up, which is why I think we've seen more talent. It makes or breaks so much. It's not just about the fans and the viewership, but also the players that can come, right? Talented wide receivers like David Davis are not going to want to play in this league if they've got guys who can't get them the football. It's kind of you don't want a Justin Jefferson situation like in Minnesota, where they have quarterbacks that literally can't throw him the ball more than 5 yards down the field. These talented wide receivers, talented running backs, and players, they're not going to want to come to football teams if they don't believe they can win with their quarterback. And something else to consider, too, is this quarterback draft / allocations happening, but what happens when a really good quarterback becomes available in early February, right? If he doesn't sign a futures deal, or he gets cut from his team, or something like that. There's guys on practice squads right now that might become available over the next month. How do they get allocated? What's going to be the process there? So that's going to be something for the UFL to really have to smoothen out before the time comes.
Well, isn't John Wolford on the Vikings practice squad right now? He could be a guy that got cut.
Go back to Neuheisel.
Yeah, go back to Neuheisel. 2019 all over again. Gotta love it.
At that point, you got to get Scooby Wright out of retirement and have him play in Dallas. But I don't think he would ever do that. He loves Birmingham too much.
Dude, he's knocking people out in the ring.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah, he does have a little. Is it MMA or boxing he's doing now?
Your mom? I have no idea.
But in addition to, quarterback play obviously has to be good. But I think one benefit this year that we haven't had in years past is an extra week of camp, which I think is going to be just huge overall, because they extended training camp a whole week. And so, just give more guys time to gel, because week 1 spring football is rough across the board. I know one year, I think it was 2023, placed a parlay on Prize Picks. Every quarterback under 200 yards that hit, no problems. So I think this year, give him a little
How
bit more
much did you
practice
cash in
time.
on that? Your life income?
Oh, yeah.
Life savings?
No, it was like $200.
That's more than I'd ever bet on spring football.
Right.
No, that's what I made. I think I put in like $20.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
that's a
I'm not
sizable
big
bet
ball
for
like that. No.
Luis
Did I-
Perez
did I-
under 200 passing yards week 1.
Did I just see that Clayton Tune got cut from Green Bay?
He did.
The
Yeah.
guy that's the guy that started that played the last game. I mean, yeah. I mean, would that not be now? Here's the thing: these guys can be clipboard holders or practice squad players in the NFL and make a lot more money than they would play, being the starter in the UFL. But to me, I think a lot of those guys might enjoy the opportunity to get something on tape rather than. I mean, you can sit on a few $100,000. There's no question. But man, you look at some of the success stories that have come out of the UFL. You would think a guy like that, or there'd be a few out there that this would be a good opportunity for them.
Like a guy that I would have loved that if the UFL could have gotten, which I believe he just signed a future somewhere, but like a Hendon Hooker to me is like the perfect prototype for a UFL quarterback. A guy that's been on and off some practice squads. He's flashed in the preseason. He's got that mobile dual threat capability. He just needs a place where he can not just like develop, but just get reps, right? He needs to throw the ball at the professional level. The UFL will be a great platform for him. Same goes for so many other guys. And you know what I'd love to see the UFL do is maybe throw the bag at one of these guys that could become a household name in the UFL, like a Diego Pavia coming out of Vanderbilt. Like, I don't really see him sticking in the NFL personally. I know there's some people who probably would disagree with that, but I just don't think he has not just a skill set, but the size. Like, I don't really see him fitting into the NFL and sticking there. He's the type of guy that if you could attract to the UFL, even if it was a year or two down the road, that's a guy that could start in the league for like 10 years. I mean, imagine if Louisville or Birmingham or one of these teams had Diego Pavia back there for 10 years. That they could go every single season and watch him compete and lead the team to the playoffs. I mean, to me, that's a really golden opportunity right there.
Well, with this new allocation too, you have the chance for UFL guys who may not have really gotten their shot because they're sitting behind somebody. Like I know somebody in the chat mentioned Holton Ahlers. I know he retired earlier, but I'm sure teams are calling him, trying to see his interest and if he would be willing to play for another organization. And you have other guys, who just didn't get their opportunity in their respective teams, may get to go to a new place. We saw, Jalen McClendon finally got to break out final couple weeks in Houston. Could have some similar situations like that.
Or Kyle Sloter could come back. Don't laugh, James.
It does feel like
Birmingham's coaching staff.
It does feel like if the UFL can kind of find a way to find those, diamonds in the rough as they have in the past. The PJ Walker storyline is a perfect example, right? I mean, that's a guy where he was on and off practice squads, gets recommended to Oliver Luck by Andrew Luck, who had played with PJ in Indianapolis, and like, hey, this guy's got talent, just needs a chance to show it. And lo and behold, he goes to the XFL. He's the golden child of Vince McMahon's 2.0 XFL, and then translates that into a few years in the NFL, and now he's up in the CFL. But, I mean, without that opportunity originally in the XFL 2.0, he probably would be working at a designer warehouse right now or something, like
Dunkin' Donuts.
Still be playing football.
Somebody who would hire him there. I mean, that is a great example because he ended up on Carolina Panthers roster and was playing well, and I saw him a little bit.
Games.
Yes, absolutely. So, there are stories out there, and these agents and these players are very aware of that. We joke about they really talk all the time about a league of opportunity, but this is a league of opportunity for guys like that who can get to the next level. But there are better chances to me to get to that level, to be where they want to be on that level, is to play, not be on a practice squad.
I love the silence.
I think everybody had to soak that in. Is that what it was?
I mean,
I thought
you
Baker
get,
was
I
going to
had
say
to let that
something.
sit for a minute.
Just
the
ruminate
issue
on
is
that.
they got to get to a practice squad.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's true too. A lot, we have seen in the last couple of years out of the UFL teams that are players that have gotten to practice squads. A few have even gotten elevated. We saw that, in the last week of the NFL season. So there's opportunity there for sure.
Sal Cannella fought for years and years, got his practice squad opportunities, finally got elevated in an active roster, got to record some NFL stats.
Yep.
And
What
just
it's all
signing
about.
futures.
Yeah.
And like
That-
that's a success story. I mean, that's what the UFL is trying to do, I feel like. And another thing is, how is the UFL going to position themselves now with Rapoli at the helm? Because we've kind of got this commercial approach now, right, with getting these big name head coaches and trying to really set itself apart as a professional league. But also, there still is that developmental side to it. Like, it's kind of hard to do both and win at both. So at some point, the league's going to have to really kind of pick and choose which side they want to lean more into and just continue in that direction. Right now, it feels like they're heading more into that commercial side. We'll see how that plays out with rosters and everything. Obviously, a lot to be determined, but that's kind of where it feels like it's going because, you talk about developing players to the NFL. John, if I'm being honest, I don't know if A.J. McCarron, Ted Ginn, Chris Redmond, even Ricky Prohl. I mean, obviously, Ricky's at least got experience in the NFL already, so I think he's got a one-up compared to those guys, but some of these coaches, I mean, if you're a player who wants to get back to the NFL, are you really going to want to go play for Chris Redmond in Louisville when you could go play for Anthony Beck in Orlando, and at least he's sent 20, 30 guys to the NFL over the last few years, or go play for a Shannon Harris who just won a championship and has also sent guys to the NFL? Even Rick Neuheisel at least has that AAF connection, and he's been in the NFL before. Redmond has nothing on his resume. Same goes for Ted Ginn. Like, I don't know.
Yep. I think you make a good point, but I also it goes back to my point that if these guys have assistants around them who have some high-level coaching, either on college level or on the pro level, I think that's going to make a lot more difference than even if it's a rookie head coach. Because those are the kind of guys. Now, here's the thing I'll say with Chris Redmond. I mean, I'm biased on this because I live in Louisville and I've gotten to know Chris Redmond over the years. But I will say that, he can work with quarterbacks and he's done that, on some different levels. But, is he going to make this wide receiver or this defensive back an NFL player? Probably not. But if he gets some guys in there and he's got pro connections, he played in the NFL for a while. He's got pro connections. He knows, the coaching style of the NFL and has those connections that he might get guys in there, just like the other rookies who can get guys in there to help develop these players. And you're right, this is a developmental league, whether they want to say that or not. And that's what these guys want to do. That's why they're playing. They want to play football, but they want to play on the next level. And you're right. I think there might be some that would be a little wary of like, I don't want to play for a coach who's never coached before. But if you get some good assistants in there who are going to work one-on-one with these guys, that's going to go a long way.
Couldn't have said it any better myself, John, but we've got roster boy in the house. Nicholas Thorne has finally made it. His computer crashed or blacked out, or I don't know what you did to it. But Nick,
never
long
download
time
a
no
Windows
see.
update, with 15 minutes to spare, because
Windows update.
Yeah, literally. No, I just hit download and then had to completely reset my computer. So we're here. That's the thing to celebrate right now. But obviously, had to get on here, even though I'm getting on super late because, we finally have UFL things to talk about. So, let's get into it.
And we finally
Some
have
of
you
us are
back
here.
on the show. It's been like 7 months, it's felt like.
Yeah, no, I've been pretty busy here. I mean, I'm busy currently. We're in the middle of portal season, so
Yeah.
I'm just glad we was able to
You've
carve
been
out
off
some time for this.
taking care of Michael Vick at Norfolk State, so doing
That
bigger
was
and
like
better
4
things.
months ago, bro.
The only win I could remember that you had. So
Fair enough. We had 6, so
not
we were
7?
FBS. We were bowl eligible. But yeah.
So Nick, we're
Yeah.
talking rosters, we're talking draft, we're talking quarterbacks. I know I don't know how much time you've had to really think about what's going on in the UFL with your portal being open and everything going on that end, but kind of your thoughts to the UFL really starting from scratch here, square one.
Yeah, I think
What is going on?
looking
upstairs?
back
Can you
at
guys
it
hear all
now,
that barking?
Yeah,
A
dude.
little.
Somebody brought up Michael Vick, and then that's what happened.
we're right back into it. I'm back, and the second I try to make a point, Ducky's making a joke. We're right there. Yeah. So anyway, I think in hindsight, it's the right move. If you're gonna have, basically 7 new coaches, effectively, obviously Beck is back, but in a different, spot. At that point, like, what's even the point of keeping the rosters the same? When probably all these rosters would have been turned over in some shape or form. So I don't hate it as a process. I think, quarterback wise, talking about the allocation process, if there was a year to do this, this is the year, because we're going to see a huge quarterback turnover rate this time. We saw, I believe it was 13 quarterbacks get drafted in the 2025 NFL draft, and the runoff effect of that is there was not many quarterback spots open in the NFL, but also meant that not many quarterbacks were able to stick. So a lot of guys who have kind of lingered on the back end of the rosters there got cut because they're, like guys like Graham Mertz got drafted, or Curtis Rourke, where they're QB3, and because they were a draft pick, they're not necessarily, they're not going to risk that. So their QB4 gets pushed out. So, we've seen a lot of those guys. A few of them will sign futures deals here, but, guys, the example for the Ravens is Devin Leary, who was a 6th-round draft pick 2 years ago, but hasn't really figured it out, hasn't really looked great in the preseason. But he wasn't able to find a single practice squad gig the whole year. So he got cut, in year 2, got cut in camp, and he's a free agent. So I'd expect him to be involved in this process. So it sucks, especially the fact that they're not going to broadcast it. That I think that's a missed opportunity, or some sort of way to
Don't worry
promote
though,
it.
there might be a broadcast that day, no matter what. So, news to come on
Yeah.
that later. But
Yeah,
continue.
but beyond that, the I just think that it was the right move given the circumstances, but it does suck for guys who are in the league who had positions that now suddenly have to worry about, okay, what team am I playing for now?
Right. And with all these new coaches coming in, there's coaches that are going to want their own guys. Rick Neuheisel,
Yeah.
I'm sure he's got guys that are in the NFL or maybe haven't played for a couple of years that are like, you know what? Hey, Neuheisel's back into coaching football, and I want to go play for him. And there's going to be those storylines. And like we talked about before you got on here, there's also going to be players who decide to retire because they're like, oh, I don't like my new home. This isn't a good fit. I was contemplating hanging up anyway. I would have only played again if I could have with Skip Holtz or with Mike Nolan or whoever. And but at the end of the day, that does open up opportunities for other guys. So as long as the UFL can bring in equal or better talent to replace these guys, we'll be fine. I think it'll be great. I think where the concern arises a little bit is there is only so much talent out there, right? So at the end of the day, who are you going to be able to attract to this league, especially with all these changes? Lots of players, player agents I talk to, coaches who are outside the league, they kind of view some of this as instability. While it necessarily isn't, I mean, obviously this is just more so restructuring for the league so it's stable 10 years down the road. Right now, I can understand why people would have that view. I mean, you know.
Sure,
Yeah.
this feels like the beta test for another reboot of the
Right.
UFL. There's no, but hopefully the case stands that there's going to be more talent that stays in than retires, and there's talent to draw from, like we've talked about.
Yeah, I think it's something that I've said on this show before. I did think that the UFL talent-wise was stagnating a little bit. There were some guys that we talked about, and obviously a lot of people were upset when the Mike Rapoli kind of pointed at this. That's like, hey, there are guys now that are backups, but they've been in the league for like, 4 or 5 seasons now. If you go back to like XFL 2020, some of those guys, it's like 6 or 7 seasons in spring football without getting an opportunity. Okay. Um, uh,
It's happened
without
like
getting
five
an
times
NFL.
on this show already.
I'm glad I'm not alone there. I feel like I do it once a week. Um, so, those guys who hadn't gotten an NFL opportunity and were kind of stagnant there. And it's like, okay, well, because he's a good system fit and he knows this, the scheme really well, he's going to linger around. But, is that guy really the best guy? And especially if you're pushing this as a developmental league, that 30-year-old guy who's solid but not one of the best players in the league, you know maybe it is time. This will be a way for some of those guys to kind of, all right, it's a way to say, all right, it's time. Let's sorry, it wouldn't be the show if a cat didn't pop in the frame. It wouldn't be, this is a good off ramp for a lot of those guys. And we've seen them kind of the CJ Marbles of the world, where it's, it was probably close to time already. Maybe he could have lasted another season or two. But, that's one benefit of this process is some of those guys, can say, all right, it's time.
Well, I would agree with that to a point. Only pushback I would have is some of these older players, so-called older players, can help develop these younger players too. So there's value in them.
Yeah.
No, I get they should, maybe some of them should not be taking up a spot where, another player could get more time. But I really think that some of these more developed and older players could help, because there's going to need to be some development, in this league, especially when we're talking about some coaches who don't have as much experience as some of their players.
And they're guys that'll lead in the locker room.
Yeah.
They're guys
Yeah.
that can really
Correct.
make or break team camaraderie, right? I mean, you look at a guy like Boogie Roberts, everybody loves him in the locker room. A Jay Sternberger or Marlon Williams, these guys in Birmingham who have kind of been staples. Jamar Smith, I mean, he was on the sidelines for the full 2024 season, yet he still played a very, very effective role in that championship run, coaching on the sidelines, hyping up guys in the locker room, giving players pointers, like helping out the younger guys and also assisting Skip Holtz. He earned that 2024 championship ring without playing a single down. So there are those storylines to think about as well. We don't have a ton of time left. We've already been on for over an hour here, but Nick, I'd be curious. We've already talked about it a bit, but with this upcoming draft, who are some of the top guys that you see available, whether it's UFL players or maybe some guys that might come into the league? Obviously, you're someone who studies rosters quite a bit, so I figured you might have something there for us.
Yeah, as far as guys not in the league currently, that's tough for me to, just.
There's so many, yeah.
Yeah, like off the dome. I haven't. Last year, I kept some really good lists of those guys, so I was on top of it. This year, not as much. I did see Seth Hennigan signed a futures deal. He was someone that I'd been kind of like keeping tabs on because he was a priority free agent that didn't stick in Jacksonville. But there's a decent amount of those kind of guys. I feel like I always mention Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He seems like an obvious choice for Columbus if you're trying to get someone with some local ties, former Cleveland Brown. That one makes sense. But yeah, and there's a bunch of those kind of guys there where, those borderline NFL guys, there's always, a good handful.
We're just talking about Clayton Tune just got released from Green Bay. I mean, there's
he's gonna stick in the league another year. I don't view him as someone who's gonna fall all the way to the league. If he did, he did go to Houston, I believe, in college, so he would be a gambler, or at least they would have the right to first refusal on him. But Jason Bean, that's another example of a guy who
Memphis
was in
quarterback.
Yeah, so he's someone that I think, he'd be interesting too, because I don't know if he would come into this league as a receiver or quarterback. Some of those
he
guys,
also played college for a bit at North Texas,
O-line,
right near Dallas.
Yeah. But given the fact that he was moving to receiver, I don't know if he would use that opportunity to be a quarterback here, because he could be a quarterback here, or if he would, like Spencer Sanders for DC last year, start to kind of make that transition and say like, hey, if I'm going to make it back to league, I need to be a receiver. So let me just commit to that at this level. Could be something. But as far as guys returning, I think a lot of the guys that I'm really curious about are the offensive linemen, because offensive lineman is like a priority at this level. And there's not that many guys that you think are, that all pro or, all UFL level that are just available that haven't gone to the league. I think of like a Ricky Lee would have been awesome for someone, but those kind of guys tend to stick at the next level. So, maybe he comes available when the Jags, season ends, but maybe not. I think Ryan Nelson immediately comes to mind. He's someone that DC has rights to, because
But Ted King can protect him in Columbus.
So okay, that's a good question then. So they have priority is does the like DC, if there's a guy who was on DC last year, but he went to Texas A&M, say, which team has first right? Is it
I
DC or is it
think,
Houston?
I believe
Aviators.
it'll start with like DC would be able to protect him first because he was on the roster in
Hmm.
2025. Then he goes to the college process, and then he becomes a free agent.
Interesting,
I
because they didn't
think
write it that way. They made it seem like it was
it
the
might be the
college.
other way. I mean, honestly, that could
Then
get, who
so
knows? Like,
fair enough. Yeah.
We'll find out
Um,
Monday.
Well,
yeah,
if it is the other way, then just delete DC and put Columbus because it's the same argument of like
right.
this is somebody who's like a legit transcendent tackle in this league that's up for grabs, and so
Right.
those kind of guys, I imagine a lot of we'll see on if which one comes first, but depending on if it's the kind of returning guys as your top priority or the college guys as your top priority, whichever comes first, that's going to be filled with offensive linemen. Anyone worth a cent is going to immediately be claimed because you just don't get a lot of them. And so, teams
And
like DC.
also, yeah, sorry to interrupt, Thorne,
No,
but
you're
like,
good.
what's really interesting about all this roster reconstruction is you look at a team like DC, and I would attribute a lot of their success this year to the fact that they rebuilt their offensive line, and it was one of the best lines, if not the best line in the league. I kind of put them and Michigan really up there as the top two offensive lines, and Tykeem Dawes, and of course you see Durant and Liam Fornadel are guys that have gone to the NFL, and Liam already signed a futures deal. We'll see what happens with Durant, but they have so much talent there on that line that if it all gets blown up and some of those guys end up at different places, and DC comes out next year and their O line is just not the same unit, that's going to really hurt their chances at running it back. I mean, offensive line is behind quarterback probably the most important unit to really lock in spring football.
And that's something where which is the priority is huge because if DC can claim their own guys, they could potentially bring back Mason Brooks and Gunnar Britton because
Right.
you have 12 names. You're probably any guy who's worth anything on offensive line. Probably Mike Mietti would be back as well. Both those guys would be back, but if you're going college first, both those guys are from Old Miss, so they would be Birmingham's allocation. So suddenly, one or both those guys could get claimed by Birmingham, who's going to try to get the best possible offensive lineman. So that's where I view it, and that's honestly part of that is the thing that I think is the most fascinating. It makes me wish almost that they made it just an open draft. Like I would have loved just an open draft of like every UFL player and seen like how do teams prioritize position. You'd imagine quarterbacks would go first, but it's like, okay, is teams going quarterback and then immediately, okay, we need to get our tackles. Like, what's the strategy there? Would have been really interesting, and we'll get a taste of that with whatever that process is of the college.
It looks like college is first from what Christopher Tisdale put in the comments. College is the 10th of January, and then player locks for protecting is the 12th. So
Okay, so I
that
was
answers
right
your
on that.
question.
So,
It is college first, which
so
means DC could
yes,
decide to snag. They can also snag like a Steven Gonzalez because he played for
yes.
Penn State, and that's one of DC's schools that they have first rights to. So there you
Yeah,
go.
and then suddenly it's like, hey, there's some players that you just lose out on because of that.
Right.
And obviously, the fact that quarterbacks are out of the picture mean that, like, I think it's going to be offensive line and edge rushers, and then maybe a corner here and there as like your guys that you're going to say, hey, if we're going to keep a guy that's local, that's part of that process, it's going to be those positions first because you're trying to get the most bang for your buck. You only get three of them. So,
Yeah.
it might be cool to take the wide receiver that might actually, make a difference in the marketing, right? But I don't think teams are going to do that because that receiver, like the chances are you can find another pretty good receiver, even if that guy's great, later in the process, whether it's retaining somebody or drafting in the open draft or drafting a guy who's a free agent. So that's the thing. I think tight end's another one that's going to be a premium because there's just not many very good tight ends at this level. If anyone's, I think like someone like Seth Green might get claimed, who it wasn't anything too special, but he's a competent guy who could be a starter in this league. So he might go.
They got to keep him
surprisingly
in
high.
Dallas after all the videos and promotion he's done for them.
Yeah,
He
like
practically lives at Toyota Stadium, man. Yeah, that's just rude.
so, and so that's why I'm like pointing him out as like a guy who like he wasn't Sal Cannella, and he's not the guy who's on the Browns, but he was competent and he could start in this league, and especially with a few retirement, the fact that Jay Sternberg's not in the league. There's just not many guys out there that are worth anything that are in that process. So we'll see. I'm sure there'll be some free agents in there that'll be one of the better guys there usually is, but the pickings are slim there too. So that'd be another spot I think teams would go after. But I don't think like linebacker, safety, running back. If there's a guy who's really transcendent, maybe, but probably not. I think that's where teams put their
and a couple of guys that
strategies.
like would be protected, like a Jacob Sailors, are already in. Like he just signed his futures deal with the Lions. Like,
Yeah. But I say all that as a personnel guy. These aren't personnel guys making these decisions, so there might be some weirdness with it, right? Or teams that
the scouting model is probably going to make all the decisions for Ted Ginn, but outside of that, yeah,
Now, they officially release like what colleges are with what teams, or are we still going off the old document?
I've been going off the old document. I don't think they've made it public.
yeah, I don't think so
Gotcha.
either, actually.
Because I'm really curious if they like expand on that at all. Because for example, like Luis Perez went to East A&M, which is only like an hour outside of Dallas. Would they consider that to be a local college, or are they strictly going, D1 FBS programs? Because something like Waco is further away from, where Luis played.
Yeah, I think obviously with quarterbacks it's a little different. Like I think if Arlington, if Dallas, that's gonna be tough to get over. If
start
Dallas
bleeping it.
wants Luis Perez back, I'm sure they get him back.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm just saying, kind of in that general like idea of what if somebody played at a lower level, but nearby school. I'm just trying to think of one off the top of my head, somewhere other than Dallas, but. Like let's say San Antonio was still in the league with Lindsey Scott Jr. playing at Incarnate Word. Would that count as, a regional player for them? Yada, yada.
Yeah, good job. You went another quarterback.
Yeah. You know where my head's at.
I couldn't think of anyone either, honestly. But yeah, no, that is interesting. My argument, and I think why they wouldn't do that, is because if your argument is, hey, we want guys who are super marketable in that area, and you're taking the quarterback position out of it, like, is the very good offensive lineman I'll point out myself, is the very good offensive lineman from Towson really making a difference in DC Defenders sales?
But is the very good offensive lineman for, I don't know, UAB making a difference in Birmingham?
Yeah, well, at least the impact of like who knows about that guy. Like if that tackle is at Bama, right? Like Bama fans probably know about him if he was worth anything, right? And so I think that is your argument. It's like and tackle's a bad example because they're often kind of forgotten about, but like that tight end or receiver or running back at that school is going to make a huge difference. Whereas like, hey, if there's a running back at Incarnate Word, like, they have a good fan base, but like, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the reason why, San Antonio's tickets are different, for an example of that, but
Yeah.
Well, we will find out next week. At least a lot of this. So it's going to be
And maybe even this weekend, right?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Maybe there'll be some announcements during the Super Bowl. Super Bowl, good grief, the playoffs. I've been off my game today, guys. It's been a rough couple weeks here. But anyways, I don't know how much else we have to cover. It's been a lot. I'm really bummed. Guys, please go tag @therefsays on Twitter and tell him that he should be ashamed of himself for not showing up to talk about Kevin Sumlin. But
Dude.
anything else you guys think we need to kind of discuss here before we wrap things up? Next week's going to be big.
Yeah, each team's getting 3 quarterbacks. Good
Really?
news. Yeah.
That's groundbreaking.
Do we know anything about schedule yet?
That is a good question. I mean, the goal from what Rapoli was saying a couple months ago was to have it out in mid-January, which has kind of been pretty typical. But my guess is maybe this upcoming week is a draft, and maybe we get the schedule the next week after that. I don't know. We'll see.
And then we got to get uniforms, and then we got to get updates to the UFL shop, and then we got to get
Bathrobes.
Yeah, we got to get the bathrobes back in stock as
That's
soon as
right.
possible.
I think they
Refunds.
sold out.
Dang it.
That's crazy.
We never got our shipment.
They did not.
If I see somebody wearing those in the, I'm gonna go nuts. I'm gonna go nuts.
I'm gonna guess you won't see that, but
I feel like it'd be hilarious if the team that had the least amount of fans, we see someone with a rope there. I feel like that would just be.
I highly doubt
perfect.
people in Birmingham take baths, dude.
I will refrain from following up on that. Well, guys, it's been a fun show. I appreciate everyone taking the time, even Thorne after his computer went all haywire on him. John Lewis, it's always a pleasure. Guys, make sure you're checking out his YouTube channel at John Lewis Sports. He's got some fun content, including a recent video which breaks down his whole UFL shop experience, which, let me tell you, it was quite the experience.
Indeed.
Ducky, you know where to find him, our internet troll here at PFN. And James Baker is on the PFN crew now officially. He wrote his first article, which is now completely irrelevant because none of his selections for coaches in Dallas was even remotely close. So,
oh, welcome.
Yeah. Yep. I'm sure Rapoli read it, was just like, nah, we're not doing this.
all right, guys, until next time, James Larson, Pro Football Newsroom. Stay tuned for next week. I'm trying to put together what should be a really, really fun live show covering the UFL draft. More details to come on that, but until next time, this was Around the UFL. Who sucks?
St. Louis sucks.
Anybody?